So a lot of people ask me how I do it because I have a lot going on in my life. I work a full-time job. I have multiple music projects. I foster pets, cats and dogs. I have 2 adult children that even though they're adults and out of the house, I try to spend a lot of time with them. I'm married. I have a husband, try to give him a little bit of time too. And I will tell you my number one secret for getting it all done is I take good care of myself in my downtime. I'm also in my mid-50s, and unlike my music partner, I am very much an introvert, textbook introvert. So I need a lot of downtime. And one of my favorite ways to spend my downtime is reading. I am a children's librarian in my day job, my other life, and so books have always been as big a part of my life as music. So I thought to kind of get things going, I'm going to give you a rundown of what I've been reading this year. I believe I've lost count of how many books I've read this year, but anyway, you'll count them. I'm just going to give you a very quick yes, no, or maybe whether I recommend these books to you. And if you have any questions about any of them or want to know a little bit more about them, drop it in the comments and I'll try to tell you a little bit more. So my first read of the year was a short story called The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I had read a lot of people talking about this very, very old short story. I think it was written but it was written a long time ago, and it's about a woman's descent into madness. Very creepy, very atmospheric. That's a maybe. I loved it. If you like that sort of creepy, atmospheric, and if you like kind of a more classic style of writing, you might enjoy this. Best thing is it's a very short story. It's a very quick read. If it's not your cup of tea, you're not investing too much time in it. My second book was Mouse 1. This is one that you may have heard of. It's all about the Holocaust, where the people are turned into mice and cats, with mice being the Jewish people put into concentration camps and the cats being the Nazis. Very important read, and I read it. My library does a podcast about different books, and I read it for that partly, but also because I'd always wanted to read it. I've only read part 1 so far. Highly recommend it. I think everybody should read it, and I plan on reading the rest of the story this year. The next was actually a duology. We Set the Dark on Fire and We Unleash the Merciless Storm. These were both by Taylor. I hope I'm saying that name right. Tehlor. Taylor K. Mahia. This is a young adult dystopian fiction duology, and strong women characters. It's about, I don't want to give too much about what it's about here because you can always Google that and find out. But if you're looking for kind of a quick-paced read and something fairly easy, high interest, I guess, if you've been in a reading slump and want to get through it, if you like dystopian fiction especially, this was a really solid duo. I'd say a yes if you like reading some YA, some young adult. One that I give a strong yes to is Daisy Jones and the Six. Maybe you've seen the series on Amazon Prime. I actually saw the series before I'd ever heard of the book. I listened to the audiobook in January. I recommend the audiobook for this because they actually use a different voice for each character, which I think is a really fun way to do it. And it's all about being in a rock band back in the 70s. So it was really, really a fun read as a musician, or listen if you listen to the audiobook. I think audiobooks are reading, by the way. I'm a strong advocate for that. However you decide to take in a book is reading as far as I'm concerned. And I would say that I actually preferred the series, but the book was still very solid, very good. And that's a very rare thing. I rarely prefer the movie or TV series over the book. I don't know, this one, it's just a little easier because it's told in almost like interview snippets from each of the characters, and I just felt like it worked better as a story on TV. But that was just a personal preference. I still recommend it. My favorite book of the year so far was one my brother recommended, A Gentleman in Moscow by I can't remember his last name. I have it written down and I can't read my writing. Anyway, this also was made into a series on Hulu, I believe. And the book, in this case, the book definitely better. The series was solid, but the book just has so much more to it. This is kind of a slow-paced book. The slow pace of it made it feel just very, I don't know, relaxing, and just you got to kind of savor it a little bit, which I enjoyed. If I could have lunch with any character in any book I've ever read, it would be the main character from A Gentleman in Moscow. I just loved all of these characters. I loved the pacing of it and the setting. It was a nice kind of soothing read in the midst of some of my other more troubling reads. So I definitely highly recommend this. Another one that I highly recommend is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. That's a definite yes. Another recommendation from my brother. I will read any book he recommends. This book was, just like it says, it's the story of a boy's life growing up in, I believe, the 50s and 60s, and very nostalgic and heartwarming. I was sobbing at the end, and I hope you will too. I love books that make me cry. I know that seems a little strange, but it's true. Now in February, I read books mostly all the books I read in February actually were by Black authors, and I usually make that a goal of mine. Not that I don't read Black authors all year round, but in February I read exclusively Black authors. My first read was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This is one that I've always wanted to read and been on my reading list for a long time. She's a beautiful writer. I love the poetry of her writing. I'm going to say this is a maybe, though. It's a very tough read. It deals with a lot of serious issues that might be hard for some people to read about. And also her writing style is kind of a stream of consciousness almost. This one not as quite as much as some of her others, but it might not be everybody's cup of tea. I would say try it, give it a couple chapters, see if you like it. There's a lot of really important content in it. An absolute yes for me in February was Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. There are a couple other books in the series. This was the first one, and I plan on reading the rest of the series. Huge yes. This book felt almost prophetic to me. It's very dystopian about food shortages worldwide and worldwide drought, and just the closed off communities they create, and then how things kind of fall apart. And this woman she kind of develops almost like a religion based on everything that's going around. Very good read, highly recommended. The next one is The Poet X, and this book was phenomenal. Definitely a yes. It's another young adult book. Being a children's librarian, I read a lot of young adult. I absolutely recommend the audiobook on this. It's beautiful. It's actually read by the author, and it's just beautiful. And I did not make a note of the author's name again. You can look it up, Google it, but it's phenomenal. Absolutely recommend. And there's nothing, because it's a YA book, there's nothing super troubling about it, although it does deal a lot with some racism and some family dynamics that are kind of rough, but it's a beautiful book. The next one was James by Percival Everett. This is, again, a yes. I think it was because it got so much critical acclaim. I was maybe a little bit disappointed. I hate to say that, but it was still a very interesting take on, it was the story of Jim from Huckleberry Finn and told from his perspective. So that was very interesting. I had some problems with a few things about it that I don't really want to get into here, but yes, I definitely recommend. It's an easy read. It's a fast-paced book, and I think most people would enjoy it. You don't have to have read Huckleberry Finn. I think it gives you some good perspective if you do, but you don't have to read Huckleberry Finn in order to get a lot out of James. Another one that was an absolute yes, and I think most of my books are mostly yeses because I think I've gotten pretty good at vetting my reading material. Beartown by Fredrik Backman. He's a, I believe, Swedish author. So far, everything I've read by him is an absolute yes. A Man Called Ove. My grandmother just asked me to tell you she's sorry. And Beartown, again, it's the first in a series of a trilogy, I believe. The content matter is very difficult. It involves sexual assault, but it's handled just beautifully by this author, and with some very satisfying endings, and I'm looking forward to reading on the rest of the series to see what happens to these characters. The next one is way outside some of the others I've read. I usually am really big on like thrillers, and I hadn't read a lot this year. I read Pet Sematary by Stephen King, classic Stephen King. I loved it. It is, if you like horror, I'm going to give this a maybe because not everybody loves horror. There were some really difficult parts of this book, really heartbreaking, but also one of the scariest Stephen King books I've read yet, and I've read a lot of them. So yeah, this was up there with like The Shining, and another of my favorite Stephen King's books is Salem's Lot. This was definitely old school Stephen King. Loved it. And then right now I'm currently doing kind of a long read of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I read just a little bit every day, and it's going to take me through probably mid-June to read it, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm not taking a long time with it because I don't enjoy it, but just because I want to savor it a little bit and get the most out of it, because it's just a classic for a reason. It's really one of his best books. And then I'm also just started Wayward by Amelia Hart. Really enjoying it, and I'll give you my review of it probably when I do my April rundown, beginning of May. That'll be my next set of books that I'll review. My next books reviews won't be so long. I'll probably do these once a month, give you a rundown of what I'm reading, because this is a lot of what I'm doing when I'm not playing music. So I hope you got some ideas here for some things to read. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Also, if you have a book that you're thinking about reading, but you're not sure that you want to, drop it here and I will read it for you and tell you a little bit about it in one of my videos, and you can decide whether or not you want to read it. All right, see you next time.